Hello YouTube! Welcome to D&D Daily. My name is Sage. Today I'm going to be doing another in the Bard Mastery series. This one is going to be going over our first level spells. My intention with this is to kind of give an overview, the theme of the Bard's first level spells, but also take a look at the spells, read them, and give a little bit of feedback on each one. So this should be a pretty chunky video, so sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea, and enjoy the show. Starting off our list, we have Animal Friendship. This spell lets you convince a beast that you mean it no harm. Choose a beast that you can see within range. It must see and hear you. If the beast's intelligence is 4 or higher, the spell fails. Otherwise, the beast must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or be charmed by you for the spell's duration. If you or one of your companions harms the target, the spell ends. The casting time is 1 action, it has a range of 30 feet, and it has a duration of 24 hours. I like to think of Animal Friendship as a way to create animal companions, because if you can show them that you're friendly, this is kind of the gate that you begin the relationship. It's not the whole relationship, but if you show them that you are a source of food, nice pets, whatever the animal is searching for, you might convince them to stay past the time the animal friendship ends. So for other classes, I'm thinking of this as, hey, it's a free cast for rangers, let's make more animal companions. This is a good way for druids to get animal companions. For us, it's a way to kind of make ourselves feel a little bit more druidy. Because when you think about the charmed condition, it's not a powerhouse condition. It just gives us advantage on our charisma checks against the creature. To convince it to do complicated things, it doesn't give us like control over it. It doesn't become a familiar. So scouting, not really. Maybe small tasks, sure, but taking a whole spell for those small tasks really doesn't feel right. So to me, where we get the value out of this spell is by developing animal companions. Now, I've built a bard who is kind of a mix between bard and druid, and in that build I actually did quite like the animal friendship because the race could also talk to animals, so it worked out quite well. Overall, animal friendship, it's not a powerhouse spell, but I do think it might be underutilized, and especially if your DM's flexible and has a creative mind. I think there's a lot of cool things you can do with this. I'd like to see it more. Next up we have Bane. Up to 3 creatures of your choice that you can see within range, which is 30 feet, must make a charisma saving throw. Whenever a target that fails this saving throw makes an attack roll or a saving throw before the spell ends, the target must roll a d4 and subtract the number rolled from the attack roll or saving throw. Bane is highly slept on. It's a very strong spell. It's often said that it's not good because there's Bless, and Bless is always consistent because there's no saving throw. Your allies just get the benefits. However, if your win condition is making your enemy fail saving throws, not succeeding on your own, then Bane's better. If your win condition is not being hit by them, Bane is going to help a lot in that regard. So yeah, Bane is slept on. It's better than people think. I'm not going to say it's better than Bless, but it does have niches that it fits that Bless doesn't. And so I think it should be considered, especially for flavor. If you're doing more of a debuffer than a buffer, Bane is a great option. Next up we have Charm Person, kind of a bard specialty I'd say, although it's on many lists, it just feels bard to me. You attempt to charm a humanoid you can see within range. It must make a wisdom saving throw and does so with advantage if you or your companions are fighting it. If it fails the saving throw, it is charmed by you until the spell ends or until you or your companions do anything harmful to it. The charmed creature regards you as a friendly acquaintance. When the spell ends, the creature knows it was charmed by you. So the charmed by you can kind of be a rubber clause. In fact, all of the charmed condition can be a rubber clause. If we make ourselves look like someone, do they know it was us, or do they think it was the person that it looked like? It's going to ultimately be up for your DM to decide, and depending on what they decide, you can do some fun things with it. But Charm Person is actually pretty good for social situations that are light and quick, meaning you're trying to get some information from an NPC that's nameless. In fact, I would almost put it that way. Charm Person is great for the nameless NPCs, because you're probably not going to run into them again. Charming a guard. See if you can get into the prison cell. Which is a good example, because some DMs are going to say a guard wouldn't let their friend into the prison cell, so they're not going to let you. And other ones are going to be like, yeah, they're charmed. They let you into the prison cell. So there's a massive rubber clause on this spell from being good to terrible, and you really need to experiment with it or know your DM to know what you're going to get out of it. I do like Charm Person, however, though. It really does feel very bard. Color Spray. A dazzling array of flashing colored light springs from your hand. Roll 6d10. The total is how many hit points of creatures this spell can affect. Creatures in a 15-foot cone originating from you are affected in ascending order of their current hit points, ignoring unconscious creatures and creatures that can't see. Starting with the creatures that has the lowest current hit points, each creature affected by this spell is blinded until the end of your next turn. Subtract each creature's hit points from the total before moving on to the creature with the next lowest hit points. A creature's hit points must be equal to or less than the remaining total for the creature to be affected. The real question with Color Spray is, does it have a place when there's sleep on your spell list? And that's a hard question to answer. Sleep is really good in the early levels, and Color Spray is quite good in the early levels, but I feel like it's just overshadowed by the power of sleep. Now, one place Color Spray does stand out over sleep is that you can do damage and the effect still remains. So if you're dealing with a kind of mini boss enemy, goblin boss for example, and you use Color Spray, now they're blind, now everyone in your party has advantage on their attacks and continue kind of wailing on them, whereas sleep, if one person hits them, yeah, it's going to get the crit, but then it's going to wake them up and you're not going to have the benefits anymore. However, it's also going to put them prone. Your team can also hold their actions. So that's kind of my end statement here, is I think Color Spray is good but overshadowed by sleep. Let me know what uses you would have for Color Spray that would dominate sleep, and see if I'm missing anything. I'd love to hear it. Next up, we have Command. You speak a one-word command to a creature you can see within range, which is 60 feet. The target must succeed on a Wisdom saving throw or follow the command on its next turn. The spell has no effect if the target is undead, if it doesn't understand your language, or if your command is directly harmful to it. Some typical commands and their effects follow. You might issue a command other than the ones described here. If you do so, the DM determines how the target behaves. If the target can't follow your command, the spell ends. We have Approach. The target moves towards you by the shortest and most direct route, ending its turn if it is within 5 feet of you. Drop. The target drops whatever it's holding and then ends its turn. Flee. The target spends its turn moving away from you by the fastest available means. Grovel. The target falls prone and then the turn ends. Halt. The target doesn't move and takes no actions. A flying creature stays aloft provided that is able to do so. If it must move to stay aloft, it flies the minimum distance needed to remain in the air. At higher levels, when you cast the spell using a spell slot of 2nd level or higher, you can affect one additional creature for each slot level above first. The creature must be within 30 feet of each other when you target them. Command is good. Command is really good because it's versatile. It's versatile out of combat. It's versatile in combat. Maybe your win condition is taking away their weapon. Drop is amazing for that. Maybe you have a bunch of melee characters surrounding one person, and by commanding them to flee, not only is it wasting their turn, but it's also proccing all of the opportunity attacks from your melee friends. I think really where its power stands out is the fact that it's taking their turn to do what you told them to do. This is their action, and then their turn ends after they do that action. So yes, you spend your action to waste their action, and it's actually quite a good spell to upcast, because when you're upcasting it, you're using one action to stop potentially multiple. And not only does it stop them, you can also gain benefits. Drop your weapons, and then your allies can take their free action to pick them up. Things like that. Even you can use command, free action, pick it up, and then kind of move out of the way. So yeah, I really like Command. Another spell I think is quite slept on, especially the upcasting version of it is pretty powerful. I think you can do a lot with it. That's just me. Next up is Comprehend Languages. This is a ritual, and we are ritual casters, so that's something to keep in mind. Now, bards, they get fewer spell selections than, say, a wizard is going to, and so rituals are going to be weird for us. Druids and clerics can swap it out whenever they need, so rituals fit them quite well. For us, a ritual is a strong commitment. So we need to make sure we have our fight-winning spells, we need to make sure we have our utility spells, and then anything left over where our spell slots aren't going to get used, we might as well have rituals so we can still cast spells despite having no spell slots, but it's going to be third on our tier list of things we're looking for. For the duration, you understand the literal meaning of any spoken language that you hear. You also understand any written language that you see, but you must be touching the surface on which the words are written. It takes about 1 minute to read one page of text. This spell doesn't decode secret messages in a text or glyph, such as an arcane sigil that isn't part of a written language. So Comprehend Languages, hard one to evaluate because it's so dependent on how your DM is running their world. How many DMs are going to put a different language in? And then how many DMs aren't going to include a way to comprehend that language one way or another, whether it be from the party's perspective, whether it be from there's someone to go to use Comprehend Languages. I'm not sure how often Comprehend Languages is going to be powerful as a spell selection choice for a bard. So it's a hard one to say take with one of our limited spell slots. That's kind of how I feel about it. I like it, it's cool, but the cost is too high to use it. But in the right campaign, that can totally go out the window and it can be amazing. Cure Wounds. A creature you touch regains a number of hit points equal to 1d8 plus your spellcasting ability modifier. This spell has no effect on undead or constructs. Okay, so well-known fact in the D&D community that healing is kind of bad. A first level spell just to heal, you know, on average probably around 7 hit points is not very good. We can use that first level spell for sleep to win the fight. We can use that first level spell for Featherfall to keep someone from dying. We can use it for Faerie Fire to, again, win the fight. You get the point. That first level spell is actually a lot more valuable than what 7 hit points can provide. Now, the exception to this is if we're healing someone who is downed, because now it's going to come to their turn, and we used a spell slot, a first level spell, to give them an action and to take another hit. So it's very valuable to pick up your allies. However, Healing Word is just better at this. Cure Wounds is heavily outshone by Healing Word. Cure Wounds does have a place if you have a bonus action heavy character, but as a bard, we're more action heavy than we are bonus action heavy. Our bonus action is pretty much reserved for our bardic inspirations, but throwing in a Healing Word is going to fit much better than a Cure Wounds into our action economy. So I would never take Cure Wounds. I'm going to be honest, I would never take it. I would always take Healing Word first. Detect Magic is up next, another ritual, and one I would put above Comprehend Languages. For the duration, you sense the presence of magic within 30 feet of you. If you sense magic in this way, you can use your action to see a faint aura around any visible creature or object in that area that bears magic, and you learn its school of magic, if any. The spell can penetrate most barriers, but is blocked by 1 foot of stone, 1 inch of common metal, a thin sheet of lead, or 3 feet of wood or dirt. Detect Magic, I feel, is a genuinely character-defining spell that we can do this ritually, meaning we can always have eyes that detect magic, meaning we have a 6th sense we perceive the world from, and it's accurate information more often than not, and we can make decisions based off that accurate information. If you were in real life having Detect Magic and there was magic around, you would act differently than someone who didn't. You would notice different things, you would buy different things, you would pay attention to different things. And putting that into a D&D game I think is rewarding. Building a character who uses Detect Magic basically always changes the dynamic. I've done it, and it's actually quite cool. I would often say to the DM, what do my eyes see? As opposed to saying, what do I detect magic? It's what do my eyes see? And I would have him explain how this magic looks on these creatures, and I loved it. It was a lot of fun. But just keep in mind that if you're going to go that route, you're asking a lot of your DM. Disguise Self. You make yourself, including your clothing, armor, weapons, and other belongings on your person, look different until the spell ends or until you use your action to dismiss it. You can seem 1 foot shorter or taller and can appear thin, fat, or in between. You can't change your body type, so you must adopt a form that has the same basic arrangement of limbs. Otherwise, the extent of the illusion is up to you. The changes wrought by this spell fail to hold up to physical inspection. For example, if you use this spell to add a hat to your outfit, objects pass through the hat, and anyone who touches it would feel nothing or would fill your head and hair. If you use the spell to appear thinner than you are, the hand of someone who reaches out to you would bump into you while it was seemingly still in midair. To discern that you are disguised, a creature can use its action to inspect your appearance and must succeed on an intelligence investigation check against your spell save DC. This lasts for an hour. Okay, I love Disguise Self, particularly with the Actor feat, particularly on any charisma-based character. Actor feat gives you a +1 to your charisma, and it's a great option for getting you from a 17 to an 18, for example. Mixing that with Disguise Self, you can really do a lot of amazing roleplay things, and I think it is often slept on, that combination. Yes, you can take Fade Touch, and yes, it's amazing getting that Misty Step, but don't be afraid to step out of the box and take Actor instead and try something different. Honestly, as long as there's people in the campaign, it can still be really good. But if you're just dungeon crawling, for example, it might not have a lot of value. But in the campaigns I play, it does. Alright, Dissonant Whispers. You whisper a discordant melody that only one creature of your choice within range can hear, racking it with terrible pain. The target must make a wisdom saving throw, and on a failed save, it takes 3d6 psychic damage and must immediately use its reaction, if available, to move as far as its speed allows away from you. The creature doesn't move into obviously dangerous grounds, such as a fire or a pit. On a successful save, the target takes half as much damage and doesn't have to move away. A deafened creature automatically succeeds on the save. If we cast this using a 2nd level spell or higher, the damage increases by 1d6 for each slot level above first. So Dissonant Whispers is one of our few aggressive spells. It makes them use their reaction to run, and since they're using their reaction, it does proc opportunity attacks. So we can do 3d6, and then we can get all of our teammates to get their opportunity attacks, which is probably its best use case. However, I really feel like it pales in comparison to Command. Command upcasts far better. It takes an action instead of a reaction. We can do many different things with it, and the only thing we lose is 3d6 of damage, which I think is a worthy thing to lose with that much versatility. And the Bard really wants versatile spells. So for me, Dissonant Whispers is not a bad spell, it just falls behind another one. Distort Value. You cast this spell on an object no more than 1 foot on a side, doubling the object's perceived value by adding Illusionary Flourish or reducing its perceived value by half with the help of Illusionary Dents and Scratches. Anyone examining the object must roll an investigation check against your spell save DC. When you cast a spell using a higher level spell slot, you increase the size of the object by 1 foot per spell slot over first. I like this spell. I like this spell for its flavor. I don't think it's a particularly good spell, especially when we're so limited on our Bard spell list what we can take. This is a pretty hefty cost. However, it's such a cool spell, I can see me doing it just for the flavor alone, especially for a charlatan. A charlatan would love this spell. Someone who can change your face and your voice and then go sell stuff for extra value and then buy stuff at less value. You can make a whole career out of that. There are characters in the D&D universe, this is their living. This spell, disguise self, actor feat, bam, you have yourself a living. Earth Tremor. You cause a tremor in the ground in a 10-foot radius. Each creature other than you in that area must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, a creature takes 1d6 bludgeoning damage and is knocked prone. If the ground in that area is loose, earth, or stone, it becomes difficult terrain until it is cleared. When you cast a spell of a second level or higher, the damage increases by 1d6 for each slot level above first. So it's a 10-foot radius around us, and that's its main weakness. This spell would be dope if we could, cast it like a fireball, throw it away from us, but it's always around us. And it potentially creates difficult terrain for us. So now we're kind of stuck where we're at. Its range really kills it for me. I like everything about this spell until I hear its range, that it has to be around us. Bards don't want to be right by people. Sure, it could be used as a defense, but probably just disengaging and running is going to be a better defense than it. I want to like this spell, but I feel like its range is really kicking it in the butt. Faerie Fire. Each object in a 20-foot cube within range is outlined in blue, green, or violet light of your choice. Any creature in the area when the spell is cast is outlined in light if it fails a dexterity saving throw. For the duration, objects and affected creatures shed dim light in a 10-foot radius. Any attack roll against an affected creature or object has advantage if the attacker can see it, and the affected creature or object can't benefit from being invisible. I like Faerie Fire. It is a really good fight-winning spell in the early levels. Keeping this up, giving everyone advantage, is going to make the fight a lot easier for you. However, it has to compete with sleep, and sleep in the first and second level is basically unrivaled. However, Faerie Fire on third level begins to outpace sleep. And the nice thing about Faerie Fire is you can take it as a bard, and the nice thing about it is that it has uses forever. It can stay on your spell list and still get value whenever there's an invisible creature that pops up, for example. And it doesn't have to be your fight-winning spell forever, so it has some added versatility in that regard. So if you're swapping out other spells, this one is one you can just let hang out until you have no better spell to swap out, and you might as well swap this one out. So I do like that added versatility, but I think it's kind of a more third level spell than it is a first or second. And in that case, it's competing with your second level fight winning spells. So it really struggles as being the fight winning spell. It's so close to being your fight winning spell, but it just gets outshined a little. The timings, it just never has its moment to be the best, but it's still good. Featherfall. Use your reaction, choose up to 5 falling creatures within range. A falling creature's rate of descent slows to 60 feet per round until the spell ends. If the creature lands before the spell ends, it takes no falling damage and can land on its feet, and the spell ends for that creature. Someone is probably going to die from falling at some point in your campaign, unless someone has Featherfall. It's pretty expensive for you though. Someone needs it. If you're the only person on your party who's going to take it kind of in the later levels though. It tends, falling tends to come up around level 5 when people begin flying, so waiting on it can be okay, but it's the kind of spell that you wish you didn't have to prepare, but you're super happy when you have it, and if you don't, people die. Keep that in mind. Healing Word. A creature of your choice that you can see within range regains hit points to 1d4 plus your spellcasting ability modifier. The spell has no effect on undead or constructs. You get a bit more healing if you upcast it. Alright, so the thing about Healing Word is it's probably the best emergency heal in the game for a long time. As far as, first level spells go, not talking about channel divinities or some of the crazy things that other classes can do, this makes you a combat healer, and it's such a low investment for being a combat healer. I can whip out one of my cantrips or my bow, do some damage, pick up an ally from 60 feet away. That's so amazing. It really is just super good. Heroism. A willing creature you touch is imbued with bravery. Until the spell ends, the creature is immune to being frightened and gains temporary hit points equal to your spellcasting ability modifier at the start of each of its turns. When the spell ends, the target loses any remaining temporary hit points from this spell. And when you upcast it, you can do multiple creatures. Now, this is a good situational spell against somebody who relies on a lot of fear tactics, but situational is not something we can take too many of as a bard. We need versatile. Now, if you have an ally who is going to force people to attack them, Heroism's value goes up a lot because you continually give this person who's being forced attacked hit points. You can get a lot of value out of a first level spell slot. But that is a pretty niche situation, and unless you're in later levels and you can upcast just to counter fear, if you're dealing with a lot of fear enemies, really you're not taking Heroism a lot, in my mind. Identify, another ritual. You choose one object that you must touch throughout the casting of the spell. If it is a magic item or some other magic imbued object, you learn its properties and how to use them, whether it requires attunement to use and how many charges it has, if any. You learn whether any spells are affecting the item and what they are. If the item was created by a spell, you learn which spell created it. If you instead touch a creature throughout the casting, you learn what spells, if any, are currently affecting it. So the big problem with Identify I've talked about before is that as written, you can identify as part of your short rest. So why take this spell, especially when it costs that much to do that? Yeah, that's its problem. If you have a DM who doesn't allow that, I often won't. I want the spell to be useful. Then you can't do it during your short rest. Okay, then it gets really good really fast. Also, the ability to touch a creature and learn what spells are affecting it is surprisingly good, and I think the most slept on part and the best part of Identify. So many things you can do with that. Curses, questions you have to answer, these random things that you find in the world that are magical, go for it. People as well. Even in my last session in one of my campaigns, we ran into a frozen statue of a once crystallized person. Cast Identify on that and find out what spell did it. Like, that was my last session. That's how good Identify is. Next up is Illusory Script. You write on parchment paper or some other suitable writing material and imbue it with a potent illusion that lasts for the duration. To you and any creatures you designate when you cast the spell, the writing appears normal, written in your hand, and conveys whatever meaning you intended when you wrote the text. To all others, the writing appears as if it were written in an unknown or magical script that is unintelligible. Alternatively, you can cause the writing to appear to be an entirely different message, written in a different hand and language, though the language must be one you know. Should the spell be dispelled, the original script and the illusion both disappear. A creature with true sight can read the hidden message. This is a fun DM spell, not very much a player spell. Very niche things you can pull it off, but again, bards need to be versatile, not specific, not situational, and this is the definition of situational. Longstrider, you touch a creature, the target's speed increases by 10 feet until the spell ends. Its duration is 1 hour. The best part about Longstrider is it doesn't take concentration. Say if we were in later levels, we could just use our first level spell slots to spread Longstrider around and just commonly have an extra 10 feet of movement, especially good for certain combat styles, hit and run combat styles, and if you have allies who rely on that, that could be good. But the problem with that is we are competing with some really, really amazing first level spells. Silvery Barbs, Disguise Self, Healing Word. And so we're often not going to want to waste our first level spelling slots on Longstrider. So I probably am not going to be taking this often, but I don't think it's bad. Not that bad anyways. Silent Image. You create the image of an object, a creature, or some other visible phenomenon that is no larger than a 15-foot cube. The image appears at a spot within range and lasts for the duration. The image is purely visual. It isn't accompanied by sound, smell, or other sensory effects. You can use your action to cause the image to move to any spot within range. As the image changes location, you can alter its appearance so that its movement appears natural for the image. For example, if you create an image of a creature and move it, you can alter the image so that it appears to be walking. Physical interaction with the image reveals it to be an illusion. Because things can pass through it, a creature that uses its action to examine the image can determine that it's an illusion with a successful intelligence investigation check against your spell save DC. If a creature discerns the illusion for what it is, the creature can see through the image. Here's my thing about Silent Image, is I have played characters who have the Warlock Invocation that lets you do it as a cantrip, and now it's hard for me to ever use a first level spell slot on it because I'm used to using it as a cantrip. Is that fair to the spell? Probably not, but that's always how I feel about it now. It's like, ah man, but I can just get it as a cantrip with a different build. As a cantrip, it is so incredibly good and versatile. It's amazing. Absolutely phenomenal. There's a million things you can do with this. I think an underutilized one is you just build a box of an illusion that looks exactly the same as the box you built. So like say a door, but you just build a box around it that looks the exact same, but now your party can crowd around the door and lockpick it without risk of being seen. That's a very simple one. You can make footprints, you can put your party in front of you as you walk to see if an ambush happens, all sorts of things. Really great. But as a first level spell, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. It's a cantrip for me. That's just me. Silvery Barbs. Hot take, I think Silvery Barbs should be a bard exclusive spell. You magically distract the triggering creature and turn its momentary uncertainty into encouragement for another creature. The triggering creature must re-roll the d20 and use the lower roll. You can then choose a different creature that you can see within range. You can choose yourself. The chosen creature has advantage on the next attack roll, ability check, or saving throw it makes within 1 minute. A creature can be empowered by only one use of the spell at a time. Silvery Barbs is good. Everyone knows that. Anti-crits is a big part. Anti-succeeding on saving throws is a massive part. You can combo this with yourself. Oh, you saved? Okay, now I'm going to Silvery Barbs and make you fail it. So you can combo with yourself with it. It's fantastic, it's really good, and it's probably going to be what we use our first level spell slots on as we get into the later levels. So it's a staple, is what I'd say. Sleep. The spell sends creatures into a magical slumber. Roll 5d8. The total is how many hit points of creatures this spell can affect. Creatures within 20 feet of a point you choose within range are affected in ascending order of the current hit points, ignoring unconscious creatures. Starting with the creatures that has the lowest current hit points, each creature affected by the spell falls unconscious until the spell ends. The sleeper takes damage, or someone else uses an action to shake or slap the sleeper awake. Subtract each creature's hit points from the total before moving on to the creature with the next lowest hit points. A creature's hit points must be equal to or less than the remaining total for the creature to be affected. Undead and creatures immune to being charmed aren't affected by the spell. Sleep is your best first and second level fight winning spell. Past that, it's pretty much useless. I've said that a million times about sleep. I'm sure I'll say it a million more. Speak with animals. This is our next ritual. We gain the ability to talk to animals. I'm not going to read all of it. That's basically what it does. It lets you talk to animals. This is a cool combination with our animal friendship if we're trying to create our animal companions, but that's a very niche thing for bards to be doing. This is probably going to fall on the wayside in lieu of fight-winning spells, then utility, then other rituals, so it probably will never end up on most bard spell lists, but it does have a unique place for specific builds. Tasha's Hideous Laughter. A creature of your choice that you can see within range perceives everything as hilariously funny and falls into fits of laughter if the spell affects it. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or fall prone, becoming incapacitated and unable to stand up for the duration. A creature with an intelligence score of 4 or less isn't affected. At the end of each of its turns and each time it takes damage, the target can make another wisdom saving throw. The target has advantage on the saving throw if the trigger is damage. On a success, the spell ends. Tasha's Hideous Laughter competes with Sleep. Sleep does very similar things, better at first and second level, and also competes with Command. Command can also make them prone if needed, as well as other things. So Tasha's Hideous Laughter is very similar to Dissonant Whispers to me, in that it's a good spell that is outshone by other bard spells, namely Sleep and namely Command. Thunderwave. A wave of thunderous force sweeps out from you. Each creature in a 15-foot cube originating from you must make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes 2d8 thunder damage and is pushed 10 feet away from you. On a successful save, the creature takes half as much damage and isn't pushed. In addition, unsecured objects that are completely within the area of the effect are automatically pushed 10 feet away from you by the spell's effect, and the spell emits a thunderous boom audible out to 300 feet. Not a huge fan of the spell. Its casting range is around you, which we don't want anyone around us if we can help it. Constitution saves are the worst, and also there's going to be times when you want to be quiet as a bard. We're actually quite sneaky characters very often. We don't want to blow up and have our core strategy be revolving around making a lot of loud noise. When it upcasts, it just adds a d8 of damage, so nothing special there. Overall, just weak is my kind of take on it. Not a huge fan of this spell. But it is notably one of our few damage spells. I think it's worth stating that we've been through almost all of the spells now, and we've had, what, 2 spells that do damage? Dissonant Whispers and Thunderwave? Let me know if I've missed another one, but in any case, yeah, Bard's spell list is not a damaging spell list. Next up, and finally, we have Unseen Servant. This is a ritual, and one of my favorite ones. Spell creates an invisible, mindless, shapeless, medium force that performs simple tasks at your command until the spell ends. The servant springs into existence in an unoccupied space on the ground within range, has an AC of 10, 1 hit point, and a strength of 2. And it can't attack. If it drops to 0 hit points, the spell ends. Once on each of your turns as a bonus action, you can mentally command the servant to move up to 15 feet and interact with an object. The servant can perform simple tasks that a human servant could do, such as fetching things, cleaning, mending, folding clothes, lighting fires, serving food, and pouring wine. Once you give the command, the servant performs the task to the best of its ability until it completes the task, then waits for your next command. If you command the servant to perform a task that would move it more than 60 feet away from you, the spell ends. So I don't like Unseen Servant for what what it can do for me to make me stronger and better and all the more efficient. I like it for its flavor. There's cool storytelling potential around Unseen Servant. There's cool characterization that comes from Unseen Servant. Like, what you tell your servant to do says a lot about you as a character. Do you tell it to go fetch your wine while your feet are kicked up? It kind of shows you're a relaxed character that's feels free about giving orders, or is it kind of like a command that, hey, help me, like, work alongside me as we cook, you know, that type of thing. I love Unseen Servant, but for flavor purposes. You will never hear me getting into gimmicks about having it hold items to cast web, blah, blah, blah. I absolutely despise that gimmicky nonsense. I will never go there. So Unseen Servant is a fun spell. So let's talk about the Bard spell list as a whole. As I already mentioned, damage is not a thing, and defense is not a thing. Like, look at the Wizard spell list. They have Mage Armor, they have Shield, they have options to defend themselves. We do not. So what does that leave us? Because those are two huge elements. We have a little bit of healing and Cure Wounds and Healing Word. We have a bit of debuffing with things like Bane, Command, Faerie Fire, and that's kind of where our support falls into. As far as buffs go, not much to speak of. So really, our combat falls into kind of debuffing control almost completely with our first level spell. Our support falls into, again, debuffing, a little bit of healing, and then we have a lot of utility. So the Bard's spell list doesn't come in as a powerhouse, and I think that's something that's people, when they begin playing Bard, think Bards are weak. Bards are not weak. They don't come in strong. They come in a little bit weak. They're weak to being pressured. They don't have defenses. They don't have awesome actions to use when they don't have a spell to cast. So Bards are kind of tough. I'm going to say that multiple times throughout Bard Mastery. They're not a beginner class, but they're so good, and we're gonna explore that whole way of making them good. So I'm going to talk about second level spells probably next, and then I'm going to talk about tactics between levels 1 through 4, low level tactics before we hit the big third level spells. So that's kind of what you can expect from the Bard Mastery series moving forward. This is a big video. Hope you enjoyed your tea. We are D&D Daily. We release new D&D content every freaking day. So if that's interesting to you, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one. See you later.